We made it. Oh my gosh.
We're here.
Hey, Gatsbyverse.
And everyone's here.
Hi, everybody.
Hey. How's it going?
Let's do some introductions. Let's do your name, what you do at Gatsby, and your favorite Gatsby plugin. Or your favorite Gatsby API. That works too. Tyler, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, so my name's Tyler. I'm a staff software engineer at Gatsby. Been working here for like 2 years on the integrations teams, it's been an evolution of teams. And my favorite plugin is the WordPress plugin. I'm very biased because I just love WordPress. So even though WordPress is not the best CMS to a lot of people, it is to me. So
I've been building WordPress sites, I don't know, for over a decade, so I'm there with you.
Nice. I guess I'll send it over to Lathan.
Sure. I'm Lathan English. I'm a senior front-end engineer at Gatsby. I just started. Currently, if I was to choose a favorite plugin, it would have to be the Drupal. I'm kidding. It's not Drupal. It would have to be the image plugin, right? I've worked with it and it works really well. And I like how it just displays images. I'll turn it over to Catherine.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm a senior software engineer that just started a few weeks ago. I guess my favorite plugin is one of the two that I've worked on so far. I'll say the Dado CMS one. And I'll pass it over to Lana.
Hello, I'm Lana. I'm a senior software engineer here, and I've also been here about a couple months. And I think my favorite plugin is one of the three I worked on, and that's Contentful. And I'll pass it over to Jack.
Howdy, my name's Jack. I'm product manager for the integrations and collaboration squad here at Gatsby, so I get to hang out with these folks all the time. My favorite Gatsby plugin is Algolia because every site needs better search. That was not paid product placement. Just every site needs really great search. Yeah.
Are we not being sponsored
every
by
site. We're not sponsored by them as far as I'm aware. Cool. Daniel, did you already go? Did you go first?
No, I didn't.
No, Tyler went first.
Yeah, I'm Daniel. I'm in Toronto. Been working at Gatsby for I think like 7 months now on the integration squad. And favorite plugin, you know what? I'm gonna go with every single one of them.
All 2,500.
Yeah.
All loved equally. That's great. Speaking of Daniel, you know magic tricks? You're a magician?
I'm okay. I'm not personally a magician. I grew up in a magic household. So
okay, magic affirming.
Yeah. So like my dad was a clown / mentalist. And so for like my birthday parties, he would get his friends to like do a bunch of magic, and he'd also like test out new magic tricks on us. So we've kind of seen a bunch of them, know how it's done, but don't know how to do it. Maybe in a different life.
It's not surprising. It explains why you have such a magical effect on the team.
Oh,
absolutely. Does anyone else's parents or like relatives have, I guess I would call that an interesting profession, Daniel, or interesting skill?
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else have any
I guess
relatives?
I'll also say that my mom is a face painter because I feel like that's
wow.
pretty interesting.
That is equally interesting. My dad's like in sales, which can be fun, but okay, I'll go down this rabbit hole. Some people consider software magic, yes. Anyway,
selling a very magic every day.
Yeah. I mean, Gatsby's data layer feels magical, right? It just all happens. Awesome. Well, we have some viewers, so I think we'll jump in. I'm going to share my screen here. So So we have some slides, we have some demos, we don't really have any code walkthroughs, so this will mostly be like a fun interactive time. Please ask questions in the chat. This time is for all of you. We're just here to share what we've been working on for the last, gosh, this live stream has been, Tyler, I think you've been here from the beginning of this project, 6 or 8 months in the making, so I'm very excited. Awesome. Matt, could you show my screen on the live stream? Thank you so much. Rock on. So we can dive in here. Today we're going to talk about the next generation of CMS Preview. Before we get there, the team in front of you, we're the Integrations and Collaboration Squad at Gatsby, and we are obsessed with helping content teams collaborate more efficiently and publish content faster. And when you think about within the Gatsby world, what this means is it means we work across Gatsby Cloud, the core framework and source plugins to deliver an awesome content authoring experience. If you think back maybe to the beginning of the year, we got some feedback from customers about CMS Preview. We heard that Preview regularly shut down and people had to re-enable it. Way back then, we had this concept of real-time edits. People thought those were kind of confusing. Content would be out of date or stale when content editors went to go view it. And Preview is also kind of slow and unreliable. And so this was some of the feedback that formed and shaped as we thought about this next generation of CMS Preview, sort of what we wanted to address. There are also a lot of technical challenges to this, most notably that CMS Preview works across Gatsby Cloud, Gatsby Core's framework, source plugins, and then CMS extensions, which actually live within each CMS. CMSs, they don't know which page Gatsby is actually going to generate when a user changes content or drafts it. And finally, Gatsby and Gatsby Cloud certainly don't understand the intent of a user entirely to actually know what page they're trying to preview content for. So we set some goals, knowing all these challenges and having this customer feedback, that we wanted to dramatically improve the reliability and performance of CMS Preview. This was our first goal. And once we did that, we wanted to make sure that content was always up to date, even if there were multiple content editors working at the same time. And then finally, even in a world where you're working with a headless CMS and maybe routing is custom, we want to route editors to the correct URL. So like I mentioned about a minute ago now, we've been working on this for a while now. And so we're super excited to start to share and talk about kind of for the first time next generation CMS Preview and how you can have a best-in-class content publishing workflow with Gatsby and really in the Jamstack for the first time. So we're bringing cloud builds to Preview for just really great reliability, and Daniel will talk a little bit about that later. Content sync is a brand new feature we have that helps to make sure that content editors get routed to the correct place. And then Preview UI to help content editors understand once they've opened Preview what their preview is actually doing. And all of these features work seamlessly together to deliver a really great experience. So I'll hand things, and I should mention, if you want to try Next Gen Preview for Contentful, we have a beta of it available today. And so you can head over to the URL gatsby.dev/CTP to check it out. And with that, I'll hand things over to Daniel to talk about cloud builds in CMS Preview.
Cool. Thanks, Jack. Okay, so let's go back in time for a minute. Close your eyes and picture the year that Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt just got together. J-Lo is everywhere, and we can't stop talking about Michael Jordan. And probably most shocking of all, Gatsby Cloud Preview was terribly unreliable. And no, this wasn't the mid-90s, this was just last year. So at this point, we introduced a new type of build to production, cloud builds. So you can picture them as if the Flash had a baby with incremental builds. They took them to the next level. And so we didn't feel as though if it were appropriate to call them incremental builds. So we came up with the term cloud builds. These builds were reliable, faster, and were atomically deployed rather than served locally from where Gatsby process was running. But previews at the time, they were running Gatsby developed processing cloud. So that meant that the process always had to be running to serve the preview. And there were multiple reasons why this was a faux pas. As its name implies, it was meant for development. So Gatsby Develop had two huge bottlenecks. Reliability, so the process would crash often. It was not built to scale. And availability, so the process always needed to be running. So like working locally with Gatsby Develop, it meant that the server was constantly running because the content was served directly from the process. So we always needed to be available to use your preview. And so this costed tons of resources just sitting there idly the majority of the time. And so because of this, we decided to set a limit on idle Gatsby Develop processes. What this meant is that you would have to go in and manually spin up your preview again, or otherwise you get 500 errors when you tried to view your preview content. Let's say like after a weekend of not doing any work for a couple days. So this doesn't even include the times that the process would just crash on its own. So for the next step, it made sense to bring cloud builds to previews. So this would streamline the process and not only reduce burden on our engineering, but also deliver a ton of benefits. So to unlock preview content for cloud builds, we have to do a few different things. So we rewrote many of our source plugins, including Contentful, to support these changes. And we also had to move away from WebSockets for some CMS previews and use webhooks instead, much like our production did. So the last thing we had to do was batch updates. So if 20 updates came in at once, we could squash them together into one fast update. What this also enabled was that we got build URLs for previews. So each preview build is atomically deployed, and we can go back in time and look at every preview build and see all the progression of the changes. Preview reliability improved dramatically, and customers would no longer need to be running a long running preview server. So this meant we no longer had to support two different processes in cloud. Every upgrade to cloud builds meant both production and preview saw its benefits. And as I mentioned earlier, we got build URLs for previews now. The last thing we also did was we made it so that page errors didn't crash the entire build, because preview doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to show you the content you want to preview. So on the off chance that one random page out of your thousands of pages errors out, we don't necessarily care about that if that's not the page that you want to preview. So we don't want that to fail the entire build. But let's take a step back. So preview reliability increased dramatically, but by how much? And what percentage change would really deem 2 slides dedicated to this very announcement? So if you guess 60 to 95%, then I'm guessing you probably saw the slides before the presentation. So we're 95% and climbing. And so this is as reliable as your grandmother sending you home with 4 Tupperware containers full of food after every single visit. And so I guess you're wondering how to get cloud builds for CMS Preview. So it's pretty easy. Just upgrade your source plugin to the latest version. And then also Gatsby 3 or 4 both support it.
Holy crap, Daniel. That is amazing. So exciting. Wow, this is screen share inception. We'll pass things over to Lethan to give us a demo of the next major feature of Next Gen Preview, Preview UI.
Sure. Hey, everybody, I'm going to just give you a quick look at Preview. You've already kind of seen some screens of it, so we're just going to see how it works in real time. The first thing that I had to be reminded of just recently is that in order to see your previews, you need to go to the CMS Preview tab. So, you have build settings. Over here, you have CMS Preview. And from there, you'll be given a preview URL. And from there, then you'll go to the preview version of your site. And how you know that you're there is that you'll see this little hovering box over here that gives you general information about what's happening. So for example, if you hover over here, it says that there's a preview that was updated 30 minutes ago. And you can even copy the link of the site and say you can see the actual site. But let's see it actually working where we generate a new preview. So I'm going to go back over to Gatsby Cloud and just restart the preview. And while it's building, if you come back over to this tab, in a little bit, you should see it say that it's building. and that a new preview is available. Let's give it a little time.
Super exciting. And so this was particularly helpful if a content editor is making draft changes in their CMS and kind of hopping back and forth between their CMS and preview. This will help them understand that, hey, we're generating a build based on your latest draft changes.
Yeah, exactly.
No worries, this is why we do demos, so that we can find and discover bugs and fix them before they get to customers. So this is greatly fun.
Yeah, well,
there we go.
Yeah, over here in the next tab, it says that the new preview is available, and you click it, it refreshes the page, and you can see what your new preview, and that's essentially it. So you might be wondering how you can get your hands on this preview. Well, luckily, once you it's automatically enabled for all sites running the latest source plugins. Once it's deployed in Gatsby Cloud, it's automatically there. Or if you have your own local site, all you have to do is make sure that in your package JSON, that Gatsby plugin, Gatsby Cloud is at the latest, and you'll have our greatest and latest. Yeah, that's it.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Leafon. I'm having an issue with my screen share, so I will just pass things directly over to Lana.
Cool. Hello, everyone. So now that you've seen our preview UI, I'm going to go over how to get it working on Contentful. What we're here for. So what is the previous generation of Contentful UI known for? So I'm going to click here. It's pretty spooky. For the previous generation, we need to know how to configure slugs. We need to know a bit of regex to configure them correctly. And the naming convention for things was a little bit complicated. But what does Gatsby, well, here's kind of a description of how it's like. If you wanted to enable content sync for content types, you needed to know how to get the slugs configured. You needed to get all these parameters, which are not really properly described in Gatsby. And it's all very, very confusing. But here at Gatsby, we aim to be a little less spooky. So the current new generation of it has no need to know how to configure slugs, and you don't need to know regex. So you can use that knowledge of regex somewhere else. For this iteration, only 2 copy pastas are needed. So very simple, very easy, and you don't need to know regex. So how it looks now. This is all you need to configure from Contentful side to get content sync running. Very simple, 2 things. So let's try it out. So I'm here over on the Contentful app side. And if you scroll over available apps, you'll find Gatsby. I already have it installed, but if you click it, it will give you an option to install it. Once you have installed it and authorized it, you can see your app here. The 2 things that need to be configured is Preview Webhook and Content Sync, which if you have the site running on Gatsby Cloud, you can find under Site Settings. You can scroll down, and you will find your Preview Webhook and Content Sync URL. I already have them copy-pasted here, but they're over here. If you have previously run Content Sync, if you previously run Preview, your settings will still be there under Advanced Settings. So they will not. This is backwards compatible, but we try to make sure you use the new version because it's super exciting. By default, the CMS Preview is, if you have the Gatsby app installed, added to all content types, so you don't need to worry about that. So all you need to do is go to your content, and let's go here. On the right, you will see a bright, beautiful, exciting Open Preview button. It's very purple, it's very wonderful, and we're going to click it in a second. So, for example, I am modifying my content here, and I am very excited about automating webhooks. So I'm going to add a lot of exclamation marks here. So a previous UI, you can see the changes have been saved. So now if you want to preview it, all you have to do is click the Open Preview button. Hold on a second. This, if you got a CMS Preview, should trigger build. And you can click into the build and you can see, what it's doing, what's happening. You can see raw logs and everything to get more details in case it's failing. But it has built, so let's go back. Once it has been built, our content sync UI will redirect you to the preview of your page with all the extra exclamation marks. So now that you see how awesome it is, I invite you to hear our next speaker talk about how to get it installed and started on your own Gatsby site.
Thanks so much, Lana. We'll head over to Catherine to walk through, if you have an existing site on Gatsby Cloud, how to enable content sync for it and get that same fantastic open preview experience.
Thanks, Jack. So I'm going to talk a little bit briefly about how to upgrade for your existing site. The first thing you're going to want to do is make sure that your site has the latest version of Gatsby 3 or 4, and then for the Gatsby Source Contentful plugin, that you're running version 5 or 6. On the Gatsby Cloud platform itself, like Lana showed, you can use the content sync URL. Once you have that upgraded plugin, will be populated here, and you can use that to install it on the Contentful site itself. If you still need to add that integration, it's as easy as using our Quick Connect feature, which I'll show here. I can just select my organization, my space, hit continue. And then after just a few seconds, we can see that everything is installed, including the needed environment variables are auto-populated and the preview extension as well. I'm going to hand it off now to talk a little bit more about the technical details of how we implemented this.
Thanks so much, Catherine. So we've ran through cloud builds, preview UI, and then sort of previewed this new feature we have called Content Sync. Content Sync is the future of CMS Preview and Gatsby Cloud. And so Tyler Barnes is going to give us a technical deep dive in how it works, how you can enable it for your own source plugin, and all of the really cool, awesome stuff it does.
Sweet. Matt, would you be able to switch the screen share over? Thank you. All right, yeah, so I'm going to do a technical deep dive on Content Sync. So this will be an overview of how it all works and what you need to know as a Gatsby site developer or a source plugin author. Probably we have more site developers here, but we're going to walk through all of it. So as Jack mentioned earlier, there were a lot of challenges with Preview, right? We have 4 different code bases that are entirely separate from each other, right? Gatsby Cloud, or whatever you're using to deploy, Gatsby Core, source plugins, and CMS extensions. These share a lot of knowledge between each other, but they don't really share, the user's intent to preview content, for example, or CMSs don't understand which pages Gatsby actually creates, because those are all dynamically created by your Gatsby site. You can generate whatever pages you want. So our solution, as you saw, is Content Sync, and it seamlessly connects, these 4 code bases plus your Gatsby site. So I guess there's 5 really. And yeah, so how do we do this? We have this diagram here that I'm just going to show real quick. I'll jump back into it at the end, but you can see at the top here, this is what a user experiences. So they just click Open Preview, the tab opens in that waiting room. And then it eventually redirects to the right page. Users don't really need to know about all of the stuff that happens behind the scenes, but we're going to go into it a little bit anyway, just for those who are curious. So what we're using as a shared identifier, we're calling a manifest ID. So it's actually a node manifest ID. So this is like an ID that we can use to link a user's preview intent to a specific node at a specific point in time, right? So this ID essentially, connects content to that ID. So here's an example of that, right? So this ID needs to be able to be understood and generated by any of the systems. So, it's not encoded with any special library. It's just, the CMS type and ID, and then the time that that content was updated at. And we also generate a node manifest. So that's where the node manifest ID gets its name. A node manifest is really just a file that contains information about the finally built page. Let's see. So I think I have an example one here. So you can see this is what gets generated, right? The title of this file would actually just be the manifest ID. And then inside of that, all these systems can see where that content actually lives in the end, and how we found that page. And I'll talk about this a bit more in a second here. So yeah, how are node manifests created? This is by source plugins. So it's a source plugin API. That means anyone who's not a source plugin author, this part happens transparently for you behind the scenes. But I can show a little example of that. Is the size of this good? Does this need to be bigger? You can see it? Okay, cool. So there's this action from Gatsby core, create node manifest. And as we talked about, it takes the manifest ID and then it takes the node. So this would be, the piece of content that the user is trying to preview, right? Because we understand that as a source plugin that a preview is happening and that there's a node, that is related to that preview. So the source plugin gives that a manifest ID that all the systems can understand. Behind the scenes, Gatsby basically, does a lot of magic to find the right page, which we'll talk about in a second. So yeah, like I mentioned, CMSs use the same manifest ID when opening content sync. So we saw in that demo, you click open preview and you go to that loading page. Essentially, on Gatsby Cloud, that's just using the manifest ID in the URL so that we're waiting for that file to be created so that, Gatsby Cloud can bring you to the right page as a content author. So what about Gatsby site developers? What do you need to know? Let's see. So Gatsby needs to figure out what page your previewed content lives on and which page is most relevant to the user, right? Because a single node can appear on multiple pages. Like you can imagine, even in the most simple example, you'd have, a blog where there's a listing page with all of the different blog posts, and then you have individual pages for those. So Gatsby needs to know somehow that you want to go to that individual page. But, behind the scenes with GraphQL and everything, those are essentially the same. It's just a node being queried on each of those pages, right? So we needed to introduce a new kind of hierarchy of how we figure out what the page is. I'm actually going to jump to the next slide and then come back to this one. So many sites are going to work with no developer intervention, right? So for like the vast majority of cases, Gatsby is going to figure out the right page automatically. But if you find that you're being routed to the wrong page, then we have this API that we added to the create page API called owner node ID. So I'll show that real quick right here. Got a Gatsby site example. So this is probably familiar if you used Gatsby before. We have a new API that replaces this called the file system route API, but many sites are still built using the create page API. Right. So the way that this works is, we have nodes, which are like units of information. We loop through all of them right here, just for each. And then for each of those, we're going to create a page using a specific React template. We're going to pass some information to it. And the page will be created with this path right here, right? So this could be, blog / my new post or whatever. So this is what I was just talking about. So the owner node ID. So in the case that this node shows up on multiple pages and you're getting routed to the wrong page, owner node ID, we essentially set this to the ID of the node that you created the page path from, right? So now we're telling Gatsby, this node owns this page. This is where this, like if you're previewing, you want it to be viewed on this page, essentially. So actually, I actually put these slides in the wrong order. So jumping back for a sec. So there's a hierarchy of how this gets figured out in Gatsby. So the one we just talked about, owner node ID, that is manual. That's like, you probably don't need to do it, but it's there for you if you need it. If this is not set, Gatsby kind of has a hierarchy of figuring out where the right page is. So first, it'll check the file system route API. If a page is created from that, we're going to preview that page. The next is it actually looks in the page context object. So a common pattern, if you look here, like here we're using the slug, but a lot of sites actually just pass an ID here, right? Just let node.id. We actually look through the page context for related pages and just see, for the content the user is trying to preview, is there a page, where the page context includes an ID with the same node ID? It's like a kind of a fallback, right? And then after that, we go, okay, for all the pages that exist, just give me the first one that we find where this content exists. So we kind of have this hierarchy of most specific to least specific, essentially. And for many sites, like I mentioned, this is all going to happen seamlessly. You're not going to have to worry about it, but you do have that API in the case that you need it. Yeah, so we can maybe dive into this a little bit. So let me open that over here. So we were talking about this before, right? So on the top, this is kind of what users experience. They click open preview, this tab is open, and they're just kind of waiting, and then once the preview is ready, you get redirected to it. If it fails, it'll display if the build fails, it'll display an error message, so the user understands that they don't need to keep waiting forever. There's a little like a link to open your build logs. You can actually see, which build failed, or you can send that to a developer if you're not a developer. Down below, we can kind of jump into a bit of what we went through, right? So the first thing that happens when the user clicks open preview is the CMS generates that manifest ID that all the systems will understand. It also sends a webhook to Gatsby Cloud. So, from that manifest ID content sync, the UI, the loader, it gets that ID and it starts waiting for that ID, like the corresponding file for that ID to exist, right? So it's just kind of checking periodically, is this preview ready? Down below, let me zoom in a bit more. Gatsby Cloud, receives the webhook. It starts running Gatsby, which is like these pink boxes, and that's also the source plugin. So the source plugin calls that API we were just talking about, create node manifest. Gatsby runs through that hierarchy we were talking about, finds the right page. It then outputs a file with the information that all these systems need in order to route the user to the right page. And then we can see that once that happens, the UI basically picks that up, detects node manifest to preview, and then the user gets redirected. And that's essentially how the API works. Let's see here, whoops. Zooming in. So you can see why it's kind of challenging to get this all working, but we've tried to make the API for users and source plugin authors as simple as possible, right? So as a user, all you need to understand is the owner node ID. Everything else is taken care of for you by Gatsby and Gatsby Cloud behind the scenes. We went through how it all works. That's more, for most people, that's probably like, just maybe more of like an interesting knowledge to have, but really owner node ID is what you need. And then for source plugin authors, you just need to know, you need to know about owner node ID and then also that new action coming out of Gatsby core. And that's how it works.
So all that complexity, Tyler, but all content editors have to do is click open preview and know that they're getting routed to the correct URL.
Exactly.
Amazing. So exciting. Well, awesome. Matt, if you want to put all of our faces up so we can take some questions, if there are any. Tyler, one question we had, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, is can we show content sync with WordPress working? So if you happen to have a demo of that tucked away in a corner somewhere, that would be fun.
I'll get something going. You'll keep talking and then I'll see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. So if anyone has used Sanity with Preview over the last, I guess, few months, you've known that it hasn't kept up. So we actually shipped cloud builds for CMS Preview sort of progressively over the last 6 months. So many of you are probably already using it. Sanity has not quite gotten that yet. So we'll be shipping a whole bunch of improvements to the Sanity Preview experience over the next few weeks. But Lana and Catherine, do you want to give a quick demo of Content Sync working with Sanity and kind of the new open preview button that we have for Sanity? Lana, you're ready to do that?
Yeah, I can do that.
Rock on.
The share screen.
It's a bunch of show and tell today. I love it.
It's exciting. Oh, can my screen be shared?
Oh. Command Central Dispatch. Matt, would you be able to share Lana's screen? So for those who are wondering who the heck Matt is the engineering manager on our squad who so graciously volunteered to help run AV behind the scenes. Cool, Lana, we can see your screen, but we can't see you. Can we hear you?
Wait, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Cool.
There you are.
Excellent.
Howdy.
All right. So yes, okay. So Content Sync for Sanity is currently in development and is not available, but this is like an exclusive little preview. The previous iteration of Sanity previews was very much for the whole page, but we aim to bring this to individual blog post edits. Super exciting. So we have this little to-do exploration powered by structured content, exciting title that we're currently editing. And say we want to remove the to-do. So as you can see, the changes have saved. This site is hosted on Gatsby. So we can see the build happen in 4 seconds. Super fast, super exciting. But if we want to actually preview this without navigating to this preview, we can open this drop down here. And we have a brand new Gatsby preview button that let's click. And as it's polishing the site, we can see it redirect to our manifest ID over here, and then eventually redirect to a preview of the site anytime now. Let's try that again. Let's delete more stuff, because we all know how great demos are and always being reliable.
When we did our dry
There
run
we
earlier
go.
today, we saw it. There we go.
Yeah.
Yay.
So you can see how it's going to look on your site from this preview button, which is very cool. And if any of the builds fail, you can also look and see logs and see if anything fails. So it's currently in the works for Sanity, so it's going to be coming out soon.
And Lana, if I understand correctly, the previous open preview button inside Sanity just brought you to the home page. It didn't actually route you to the content that you're actually editing. And so that's
Yep.
the benefit of this new button.
Yep, so this is per content, so let's delete some stuff here too. It's saved, and then we can do a Gatsby preview of this page. And this was something with a phone. Yeah, CMS I can use on the phone. So you get to see the content for the page editing right there and then pretty quickly, if I say so myself.
Amazing. So excited to get that out to people. Tyler, I noticed you're unmuted.
I got a WordPress demo working, so.
Okay, no worries.
No, sorry, I'm saying I did get it working, so.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
I did.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So I can show that real quick if you want to show my screen share.
Please do.
Do you want to make it a little bit bigger, maybe? I think it's kind of small right now. There we go. Okay, sweet. So these are half screens, so maybe let me make these a bit bigger. Okay, first thing I'm going to do actually is just show you the configuration screen in WordPress. So that's under settings on the left here. and then Gatsby.js. You need to be on WP Gatsby version 2.0.1 or later for this to work. And then it's the same thing that we showed earlier, right? You need to copy that content sync URL and preview webhook URL. And then those, you need to check this box as well. So you can disable this and go back to WordPress previews easily. That's kind of the point of that checkbox. But let's look at it actually working. So I was just trying out testing a brand new draft. So let's just update the title. And this is like a development site. So you can see it's just like there's not much to it. I didn't prepare this beforehand, so it doesn't look beautiful like the other demos, but you can see, oh yeah, there we go. It redirected. So I think maybe my site has a bug because it has 5 instead of 6, but it's probably something in my development site. But yeah, so essentially it kicked off a build, did the same thing as what we saw in the other CMSs, and yeah.
Tyler, I'm curious. Let's try Preview UI. If you leave the brand new draft 5 tab open and then you go make another edit to your post, we should see the spinner pop up for Preview UI.
Yeah. Okay. I need to actually close this because of how WordPress Preview works. Yeah, like it'll refresh the tab basically. So. Oh yeah, there we go. Guess there was a bit of lag there. But
Caching.
Yeah, right. I probably have like an offline plugin on this site or something. So, let's see, it kicked off the build, and I guess we'll, once the preview is ready, there we go. Yeah, Preview UI says there's a new preview available. We'll refresh. And Content Sync also redirected in that other tab. So, yeah, that must be what this is. Like, there's the Gatsby plugin offline. I probably have that in this site right here. So for previews, I think we're disabling that, but maybe in my test site I'm not, or something like that. But yeah.
Okay. Well, awesome. It doesn't look like we have. I guess I'll pause one more moment if we have any other questions from the audience. Otherwise, so excited to share everything we're working on with CMS Preview, and excited to ship it to everyone soon. Rock on.
Nice. Do we have any more questions?
There is one question, Tyler, and it actually is from a little bit ago that I missed. I apologize. Is the file system routing API supported by Gatsby Source WordPress?
Yes, it is. Oh, Moonmeister.
Wait,
yeah.
Finally? I didn't know we had actually. I remember this limitation.
So Content Sync itself supports the file system route API. For those who use WordPress, like WordPress had its own custom loading screen for Gatsby Preview, and that didn't work with the file system routing API. So this new Content Sync API we're demoing, it totally works for that.
Hooray! We should close that out on Canny.
Oh yeah, totally. I forgot about
Cool. Matt, do we have any other questions from the audience? Rock on. Otherwise, let's mention some social handles in case people have follow-up questions. So I'm at Selwood_Jack on Twitter. Tyler, what's your Twitter handle?
Tilebar, like TYLBAR. So.
Okay. Does anyone else want to mention their social handle so people can ask Gatsby questions? Cool. Well, thanks so much for the time. We'll be in touch, probably over email, sharing all these updates.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
See ya.
Thanks for joining.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.